Hey everyone, welcome to the Americana Station podcast. I am your host, Will Payne Harrison. Thanks for tuning in today. I just want to start off by saying sorry to Peter Donovan for taking so long to get his episode out. The album, This Better Be Good, has been out since April 29th. It is now July. So I do apologize. We've had quite a backlog on episodes, but we do have some more coming out. Christina Vane, Afton Wolf, and Mary Scholes are in the lineup. We're getting a few more. India's booking a couple of other interviews as well. So make sure you're following, rate and review, and all that good stuff. But let's get started with this episode.
Now for some time, and I'm familiar now with all your lines. And when I thought that I'd heard enough, you cleared your throat and stood. I said, this better be good.
Hey everyone, welcome to Americana Station podcast. Today on the podcast we have Peter Donovan. He has a new record coming out on April 29th. It's called This Better Be Good, and it better be good because he spent 55 days learning Beatles songs. So he's definitely got some Beatles influence on this new record. At least I would say so. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's sort of unavoidable. Right when quarantine started, I took on this little project of learning a Beatles song per day. And I think initially that was back when we thought it might last just like a month or so. And I was like, oh, I'll just do this every day until it's over. And of course it lasted a lot longer than that. So yeah, I made it about 55 days or so. But while I was doing all those covers, I was simultaneously writing new songs for this record. And I think for sure, there were chord progressions I kind of borrowed from some of those Beatles songs that I learned, little tricks that they do. So yeah, I don't know that the album is like overtly Beatlesque, but I do think that they were for sure an influence on the songwriting.
Yeah, I definitely heard some like Tom Petty in there a little bit, and I see that some of your influences also include like Bruce Springsteen and Taylor Swift was in there too as well. I didn't hear that. I just saw that was one of the influences.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of her songwriting, particularly like the way she kind of tells stories. That's kind of one of my preferred methods of writing songs, is just trying to like construct a little narrative in a 3-minute pop song, which I feel like she does quite well.
Yeah, exactly. When you write, do you write typically by yourself? I know you have you have All the Real Girls, and then you also have a side project with Elijah Ocean called The Rose Petals. Are you writing alone and bringing it to the bands, or is it a collaboration?
Well, All the Real Girls actually is defunct now that I've shifted to my solo stuff. These songs were all written by myself, and they turned into like acoustic demos that I then brought to my band in the studio, and my producer and those guys really kind of like broadened the sound and brought a lot of like musicality to it that I kind of lack. But I'm a huge fan of collaboration in general. I mean, I love writing songs with other people. Like you said, I've collaborated with Elijah a lot in the past. And yeah, I feel like that's one of the really cool things about playing music is it just allows you to like connect with different people and different experiences. And, you never know, like sometimes you're stuck on a song or you're struggling to find some lyrics to a verse, and you reach out to a buddy and they kind of might have like the one missing piece you need. So, I know songwriting can be a very intimate and solo experience, but I also enjoy the collaborative elements of it as well.
Yeah, for sure. I have a song on my new record that I just sent to a friend for feedback, and, they gave me a couple of lines that could use like adjustment, and I'm like so thankful for that. It's still my song. I still wrote it, but that sometimes even that sort of collaborative effort where you almost have like a friend that's helping edit can really, move the song up to a really good song from like an okay song,
Totally. And like, I think, when you're by yourself, you can kind of get in your own head and you just go down these rabbit holes. And sometimes you start to just lose perspective of maybe what you were intending to do from the beginning. And sometimes that fresh perspective, even if it's just like you said, a word here or there, can really take things to the next level.
Yeah, I know I get lazy too. Sometimes I put a placeholder and then I just never update it. So sometimes it's good for a friend to call you out and be like, that's not a great line. And you're like, yeah, I know. I'm just lazy.
No, I'm definitely guilty of that, especially when you roll around to like the third verse. You're kind of just like, man, I'm out of ideas at this point.
Right. And then the bridge. Oof.
Oh yeah. But that actually, speaking of the Beatles, that was a trick that I kind of stole from them that they use a lot. Is a lot of their third verses, they'll just repeat the first verse. And I think, if you can't think of anything stronger, there's no use in just putting something down mediocre for the sake of being different.
That's interesting. I've never thought about that. Do you have like a specific song that sticks out that they do that on?
It's a good question. I don't. I'd probably embarrass myself if I tried to guess.
Yeah, no, that's what
I feel like Hard Day's Night might be like that. But yeah, it's kind of cool because they kind of make, the verse almost becomes a hook because they repeat it again. And then they have the chorus, which is a hook. And it's almost like, you listen to some of those, particularly like the earlier Beatles songs, and you kind of forget like which parts of the chorus and which parts of the verse, because they all just kind of are like real hooky and real awesome.
Yeah.
So I feel like that repetition sometimes can help kind of like ingrain things into the listener's mind in a good way sometimes.
Yeah, I know. I was watching an interview with Paul McCartney, and he said, they were so catchy because they had to be catchy because we had to remember them. We didn't have a way to record them.
Oh, was that Rick Rubin thing that he did?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Yeah, but so tell me a little bit. I didn't get a chance to get into All the Real Girls. Now you say that's defunct, but that was kind of what the project was before you decided to go solo. Was that like a full band, like similar to what you're doing, or did you kind of take a complete turn with the solo stuff?
It's funny because when I first started writing songs, I really just wanted to be in a band. I did not want to be a singer-songwriter.
Yeah, same.
But of course I didn't have a band at the time. So, I was writing all these songs, and I was really influenced by Bright Eyes at the time. And, he kind of had that thing where it was like, it's his songs, but he's kind of like packaged it as this band. So that was kind of the genesis of All the Real Girls. It almost was just a solo project that I was performing under this name that it was a movie that came out in like the early 2000s that I just snagged for the project name. But that project went through a bunch of different iterations, and I had a bunch of different studio albums with different musicians. And then recently, the past few years here in Seattle, it actually kind of turned into like a proper band. I got some members together, and we actually started like writing songs together, and we put an album out right before the pandemic, which was poor timing, but I'm still really proud of it. But so yeah, it's kind of interesting that like initially I didn't want to be a solo artist, and I went through all this, this whole thing of like creating this fake band, and like here I am at the end, and I'm just ready to be a solo artist, I guess. But I think part of it was probably just insecurity of, you don't, putting something out under your own name. It's kind of just like there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
So I think initially maybe that was a little bit of my hesitation, and now I just feel like I'm at a point where it's like, hey, this is me. These are my songs. Might as well put my real name on it,
Right. Yeah. And this is your first full-length record as a solo artist?
It is, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. It's quite I was same thing in bands for years, and doing duos and things like that. And it's so much easier to hide behind a band because if something sucks, you suck as a band, you can't really, you don't get all the blame. But when you go solo, it's like, no, this song sucks because of me.
Yeah.
So it is, you can't hide behind it, but that's kind of a good thing in a way, because you grow. You can't play your shitty songs anymore. You got to play good songs. Yeah,
for sure. And that was like, I'm particularly proud of this new batch of songs, because I was just writing them by myself, and it really forced me to be like, hey, like you can't just have a 30-second instrumental here because there's no one here to play like a cool guitar solo. So it's like, come up with a cool chord progression, or come up with some cool lyrics or something, because it's just you and the acoustic. And, like you said, it's scary and it's a little vulnerable, but also it pushes you to take the song to a better place, I feel like.
How have you toured any with solo under your name?
Not yet. Just been getting back out in the live scene this past year. Doing an album release show at the end of the month. And, and that's another interesting thing about playing solo is like, I have a really great band here in town that played on my record, and, we do shows together that are real rockin'. It's real like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers kind of vibes. And then, I can play solo acoustic, and that's a little obviously like more stripped down, but there's a couple slower songs on the album that I'm able to play in that environment that don't necessarily translate with the full band. So I think that's another cool thing about being a solo artist is there's just a lot of opportunities for different types of shows and different types of performances, like you said, duos, full bands, anything like that.
Right. Are you doing like electric when you play with the full band, or are you still mostly acoustic?
I play the electric. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. I've almost exclusively been acoustic for the last couple of albums, but on this new one, I think I'll probably be pulling out the electric when I go full band. So
nice.
That'll be fun. I haven't done that in so long, so we'll see how it goes. Last time I did it, there's like this loud ass guitar amp behind me, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. You don't just get like a little bit in the monitor. You have this blasting amp. You can barely.
And it's interesting because it's like, as playing an electric guitar and playing an acoustic guitar, two totally different things. You're playing the same song, and it's like your approach to how you play the guitar has to be completely different.
Yeah. You can't just strum. It's not as rhythmic. You got to pick stuff out, and it's weird. But yeah, I've been working on that, so we'll see how that goes.
Are you in the studio right now? Are you still in the writing process?
I just mastered my record. So
cool.
I'm all
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah. So I see how many songs are on this record, because I see 7 here, but are there more? Is it like a 10-song record or?
Yeah, there's 11.
11.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so it's coming out the 29th. What's the next single?
The next single is going to be the title track, This Better Be Good.
This better be good. And when does that come out?
That is coming out next week, next Friday.
Which is the
22nd?
22nd. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It's so weird doing singles too, that's like a whole new thing. I used to just drop albums, and now you have to think about the whole single process. What's the single?
Yeah. And especially now, the single back in like the 90s when I was growing up, it was like, the single is like a big deal, it'd be like, that would be the only thing you would hear, you'd hear the single before the record would come out. And now, what's the definition of a single these days is kind of hard to pin down a little bit. Is it like the hit, the biggest hit, like commercial hit, or is it like what you think the best song is, or what you think people will think the best song is? It's tricky to navigate for sure.
Yeah. It's like such a mind thing, because you're like, okay, this song's 3.5 minutes. It's kind of catchy. This is probably the one, but you never know until it drops, because, you don't really get the feedback until the whole album's out, which one that people kind of gravitate towards.
Yeah. And it's funny. I'm sure you've had this experience with your own music where it's like you're working on a record or you're working on a song and you're like, oh, that's the hit. And then you play the record for people and they like pick, they all gravitate towards like the last song you would have picked. They're like, oh, that's my favorite. You're like, oh, I would have never guessed that one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's such a weird thing. Are you putting this, I know you and Elijah kind of started a record label. Are you putting this out on that record label?
No, I'm putting this out through Red Parlor Records.
Okay.
Based out of Connecticut. Our record label was a little bit of like a COVID project, I think. And we put out a couple things, and then once stuff started opening up again, we realized that we just wanted to be musicians and not business people.
Yeah.
It reminds me of sort of like, there's stories of people that were like, oh, I got a Peloton during quarantine and like I never used it, or like, oh, I decided I was going to like learn how to knit and I never learned. Like we kind of were like, oh, maybe we should try to start a record label. But yeah, as it takes so much time and money and resources to keep that stuff going. So that was a bit of a short-lived project. But yeah, I'm lucky to have another label on board to put this one out for me. So
that's awesome. So yeah, you said you met Elijah in Maine, but did you grow up in Seattle?
I actually grew up in San Diego, and then I was going to college in Los Angeles, and I started playing. That's kind of when I started writing music in my early 20s. And I had met some musicians that were originally from Maine that had moved out to LA, and I got kind of burnt out on the LA thing, and my friends from Maine convinced me to move back to Maine with them, which was kind of wild for me as like a San Diego kid. My first Maine winter was quite wintry, as it were. But yeah, I played music out there, and there's an amazing music scene. Portland's a pretty small town, but I met so many talented people there, Elijah included. And my band at the time was looking for a lead guitar player. and Elijah hopped on, and him and I just kind of hit it off right away. You know, we have a lot of the same sensibilities, and we're both real nerds about like songwriting craft and all that stuff. So we started writing together, and yeah, we've just always been kind of just like collaborating on stuff on and off through the years, and finally culminated into that Rose Petals record that we put out last year.
Yeah, that was a great record.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm proud of that one.
Did y'all didn't really get to tour on that? I think I asked him about that. He was on the podcast sometime last year, and he said y'all weren't really able to tour too much on that one.
No, that was another COVID casualty, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's such a weird time because things are starting to kind of open up, but it's like, do you go full throttle, or do you like? I've just been kind of, because I just finished mastering, so I haven't booked anything. I just had my first gig, and probably like full gig in like probably a year, or at least 6 months, yesterday, and then you're like, shit, do I remember the lyrics? It's a whole thing. It's like coming out of hibernation.
For sure. And like, I mean, as you probably know, booking shows is a lot of work. Certainly booking a tour is a lot of work. It's a lot of balls in the air that you got to kind of corral perfectly to fit together. And it's just to go through that whole process. And then, back when things were just getting canceled all the time, like it became kind of discouraging and just confusing. So
how's the scene looking in Seattle right now? Are venues opening back up, or is it?
Things have been pretty open since, I guess, summer of last year. There's a couple like pretty nice outdoor venues that started doing shows, and then things are pretty much back up and running locally, which is nice. It's we were I think Washington State was a little more cautious about COVID and things like that, so I think we were a little slower to, I think like in Nashville and stuff, things were opening up quite earlier than they were here, but we're back up for the most part.
Awesome. Yeah. And where's your album release going to be at?
It's at the Sunset Tavern in Ballard.
Okay. I've actually heard of that one.
No, nice. Yeah. It's one of my favorite venues in town. And they actually took that during COVID, they kind of did a renovation of the space. So I'm really excited to play there.
Are you doing any like other West Coast states, or?
Nothing on the books right now other than just kind of local stuff, regional stuff.
Nice. Are you releasing vinyl records, cassettes, just CDs, streaming?
Just doing CDs and streaming for now. But hopefully, I'd like to get it on vinyl at some point. I know that's a whole nother mess with like Elijah, for example. I remember he put out his record last year, and I think he just got his vinyl now because it was so delayed, which is really sad because it's such a great way for smaller artists, I feel like, to make some money selling music. And it sucks, when you put out a record and it's like, well, I'll have vinyl in a year for you, but yeah, I love vinyl, and I would love to put this out on record at some point.
I'm seeing that CD had the first like growth in this last quarter in like 20 years or something like that. It's crazy. So I think like all the younger kids are starting to see that as like this is cool and vintage.
Yeah.
This whole generation grew up without any sort of physical copy of anything, and they're starting to buy CDs, which is so interesting.
I'm a fan of the CD. I still have my massive CD collection.
Do you?
From the olden days. Yeah, I've been carting that thing around. I feel like a lot of the cool thing about a lot of those old CDs that I used to get is like, there'd be interesting like booklets, or they do like there's a lot of these cool like live Bob Dylan bootleg CDs that I remember they put out that would have these like beautiful books of like photos and all these like stories and essays. And, it's kind of an old school thing, but this is part of why I like vinyl too, is like, you put the music on and you got the cover there, and you got, maybe the artist's photo is there, or maybe there's some other kind of piece of art that's supposed to kind of coordinate with the music, and you're kind of consuming it all at once, which is obviously trickier to do these days with streaming. But
yeah, it's definitely, yeah. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm not going to download a book it just doesn't feel, it's not as good. It's not as tactile, and like, I don't know. I also am not a fan of reading books on Kindles and things like that.
Yeah. I'm also a big like nerd about, it's like, oh, like so-and-so played bass on this track. Like, I recognize that name from this other album, or like, I feel like reading the credits is always interesting, and producers and all that kind of stuff. So definitely enjoy that aspect of like a physical copy of something.
For sure. Yeah. I'm actually thinking about getting cassettes on this one because I have a cassette player, and they're so cheap.
They are pretty cheap. Yeah.
You can get them made for like, I think under $1 a piece or something like that. So you can sell them for like $5-7 and make a pretty decent profit off of it. They're just so cheap. And I know that cassettes have kind of been coming back a little bit too. So I'm going to take a stab. I think at cassettes, we'll see how it goes. I don't think they sound better. They absolutely don't. Like the whole, like, I get the argument for vinyl. CD obviously is a high quality, high definition sound. I don't think that there's any innate value over vinyl or CDs with cassettes. I think it's just kind of cool and cheap.
Yeah. I'm not a huge audiophile about that kind of stuff. I mean, I believe you if you tell me vinyl sounds better than CD, but for the most part, it all kind of sounds comparable to me.
Yeah, it has like a warmer quality for sure. I mean, CD, I guess, is higher fidelity, but then you're dealing with more digital aspects, I guess. So it's all like, there's always a compromise somewhere along the way. But so you record your album in just 3 days. Did you have a producer? Were you producing your own record? Did you kind of just let the musicians do their own part?
I did have a producer. His name was Bradley Lania, and he works at a studio here in Seattle called Strange Earth. And yeah, I had known him a little bit just from kind of like being in the scene, but we weren't close by any means. But I was just a fan of his. He has a band called Vaudeville Etiquette that's really awesome, and he had produced a couple other records for artists here that I enjoyed. And we really just wanted to get like a lot of live energy. We didn't really want to think too much about it. The band members were all exceptional at their instruments and brought ideas to the table. Brad was just very, I don't want to say hands off, because he's certainly like, he's a huge reason that this record sounds the way it does. And I'm really happy with how it sounds. But it was kind of like put the right people in the right places and kind of let them do their thing and see what comes out of it.
Yeah. Did you sing all the vocals with the live takes, or was that like a separate?
We did. There's one track, the last track on the album, If I Knew Then, is all just straight up live in the room with the vocals. And then the rest of the tracks, we redid the vocals. So there were some overdubs. The basic tracks, bass, drums, keys, rhythm guitar, those were all just live. And then, we added a couple guitar solos and some little kind of like keyboard flourishes here and there, and then redid the vocals. But we didn't want to take, I don't know if you've had this experience with making records where, sometimes I've made records where they don't come out till like 3 or 4 years after I started working on them. Stuff just takes forever. You start piecing stuff together, or, it's hard to book studio time. It's expensive or whatever it is. But, so that was actually a refreshing experience for me also, to just kind of go in and, by the end of the week, we were like pretty close to having the record done, which was cool.
Are these guys you've worked with before, or did you kind of meet them in the studio?
I knew a couple of them, more so than others. I mean, they were all kind of, I go to a lot of shows here locally, and I love, like I said, I love collaborating. So every time I'm at a show, I don't know if you do this, where you see people on stage and you're like, oh, file that name away. Like that's person's awesome. Like I'd love to work with them or something like that. So these were all kind of guys that were on my little mental list of, if the right project came along, like these would be some of the names I would call. I knew a couple of them a little bit more than others, but the chemistry in the studio was great. We all just kind of hit it off right away. And, I was really, really grateful for those guys, because they all came in and just killed it.
And so it was mostly drums, bass, guitar. Were there any other instruments in there?
There's a keyboard player too.
Keyboard.
Who's playing piano and organ.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Did you record the tape or was it just kind of
No, just digital.
digital? Yeah. Tape is like super cool, but also super expensive.
I've actually never done tape. But yeah, it's, digital is there's a lot of conveniences about it. The cost for sure. But yeah, have you recorded on tape before?
No, because it's so expensive. Yeah. I mean, like those rolls of tape are, they're hard to find and, cost quite a bit. And you really do have to like, okay, this is the take. It has to be live. No, not this one coming out, but my last studio album we did live in the studio. And then we overdubbed with like pedal steel and fiddle and things like that afterwards. But on this one, we just did, I had to do drums because same kind of situation. We're all COVID working from home and I did all the production, mixing, mastering, everything. So I rented a studio just for drums and for overdubs. And then I did pretty much every core thing myself on my own time to save myself money. It's so expensive, man. Like just renting, and this was a friend's studio with a friend's rate, it's like $350 a day,
Yeah.
So, and that's still me mixing and mastering and recording and setting up and everything.
Damn.
So yeah, it gets pricey.
Yeah.
What do you have any plans for later on in the year with releasing more music or making any more tours?
I have a couple things that I've recorded that I had recorded during COVID that are not on this record. That I'm kind of trying to figure out what the next when it makes the most sense to release those. I did a couple Donovan covers.
Okay.
Which I want to release as Donovan Sings Donovan as a nod to Harry Nilsson's record of Randy Newman covers. Nilsson Sings Newman. So those might come out later this year. And then, I don't know. I'm excited I haven't been writing a lot lately. I don't know how you usually write, but I typically like, if I know I'm going to be starting a record, I'll kind of like hunker down and I'll just write a batch all at once. Yeah. And then if I'm not necessarily like, little songs will come and go here and there, but if I'm not really writing for something, I'm not typically like writing a lot. So I haven't been writing in a bit, and I would probably kind of like get back to that, see what I can come up with for maybe a new record.
Do you like clear your schedule and just like literally hunker down, like turn your phone off?
This experience was so unique because it was during quarantine. I mean, I literally was hunkered down, and I mean, it was I would wake up, I literally had nothing to do. I would just I'd spend the morning working on a song, and then I'd take a walk, and then I'd come back and finish the song. And, that was such a unique experience. And there was also the fact that like everything was on pause. So there wasn't really anything else for me to think about. Cause I feel like you could like take a week and like go to a cabin and kind of like try to write that way, but it's like your life is still existing as simultaneously. And like, there's still things going on. So yeah, I'm not sure. I did find that just kind of having nothing to focus on other than writing was beneficial. So I suppose I would try to find some kind of assimilation of that. Hopefully it's not another pandemic, but maybe just get away for a week or so and just focus solely on writing.
What is the Seattle? I mean, I haven't made it to Washington. I've been to Portland and up that way in Oregon, but what does the Seattle scene look like? Is there like pockets of folk and Americana and stuff like that? Or is it?
Yeah. So there's a huge wide array of different genres here for sure. But the Ballard neighborhood where the Sunset is, also the Tractor Tavern is there, which is it's like an old school, I wouldn't really call it a honky tonk, but they do a lot of like Americana, country music there. So yeah, it's interesting. There is a bit of a country like Americana scene. It's not huge here, certainly not as huge as it probably is where you are, but there's a good batch of folks and it's a good scene, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've noticed. I've only been to West Coast once to tour, and I noticed there's a lot more like indie folk type stuff was like kind of the prevalent thing that was around. At least, I mean, like again, I haven't been to Washington, but Yeah, that's awesome.
How'd your show go yesterday?
Man, it was weird. It was like I've used to be like a road dog, and I haven't had that like jittery feeling in so long. And I just felt like it was 10 years ago again, and you haven't said, you know what I mean? It was so weird. Like I got nervous, and there's only like, 30 people, 20, maybe 20 people there. But that was weird.
Yeah, after I finished writing all these songs, I kind of took like a couple months where I was just like, I didn't play guitar at all.
Yeah.
This was still like the height of COVID. It was obviously like, a lot of uncertainty in the world. And I was just like, oh, I don't even want to touch my guitar. And then, I lost all my calluses, and then I finally picked it up, and it was just like, I was like literally learning it all over again, which was awful. But yeah, I mean, just getting I always think about like, there's that scene in the Avengers where they need to like make Thor's like magical axe, but like the star has been frozen for so long, and they're just like, oh, we just got to get the motor moving. But that's like, like once you get it moving, it kind of like is going.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's just like how, like we just kind of like, as musicians, we just stopped everything. And it's like, there was so much forward momentum, and then you just stop it. And it's hard, like you say, to kind of like get things going again.
Well, it's also weird because like you just rely on your memory to jump in with the lyrics. But when you haven't done it in 2 years, like you just panic and you forget the lyrics. And I did this back in, what was it? October. I did this tribute to, oh my God, what's her name? I'm blanking. Anyway, we did this tribute and to this artist, and I didn't really know her well before, but of course, if you get asked to do like a city winery gig, you're going to say yes. And so I picked one of the songs with the least lyrics, and I still choked. I still forgot the lyrics on stage in front of hundreds of people, but somehow I made it my way through. But yeah, I think that'll be the biggest struggle coming back, is remembering all the damn lyrics, especially with all the new songs.
Yeah. And that's like we were talking about earlier about how you can about hiding behind a band. And, if you're playing by yourself acoustic and you forget the words, it's like, you're out there,
Yeah.
If you got the band going, like, maybe somebody could take a little solo or something, but
right. Yeah.
It's scary when you're up there and you're just like, I don't remember the words.
Everybody's done it though. So I feel like there's a little bit more grace coming out of COVID.
For sure. And like the keyboard player in my band likes to use the expression human moments for mistakes, and it's like, you try to be as perfect as you can, but at the end of the day, it's like, we're just human beings up there trying to play some music, mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I know whenever I'm doing solo too, like some of the songs I'm playing like bass lines that I don't play with a full band, and trying to do like in between stuff, and you're doing that. And I haven't done that in so long. Like you said, I pick up my guitar to play for my daughter, but that's about it. So like you're like, shit, I don't know if I can sing and play this, playing three things at once.
But yeah, like you said, I mean, I think people are just psyched to be out watching music these days. So
yeah,
the audiences are very generous.
Yeah. And I don't think they see what we see, because what you are at your best. And of course, like you said, we're starting that star.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you definitely, that's something I always have to remind myself too, if I'm getting nervous before a gig. It's like, for the most part, the audience is going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Like, they're there, they want to have a good time. They're not there to like point out all your mistakes. Like they just want to have fun. They want to hear some music and have fun. So, most of those mistakes are probably just going to roll over them. Yeah.
Most of the time, if you're covering something, I've definitely had people say that, like, you got the lyrics wrong. Whoops. Especially in Nashville, man. Everybody knows every song.
Like all the country songs and
stuff? All the country songs and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I just did, some buddies of mine did a Beatles tribute night, Saturday night, and I sang Hello Goodbye with them, which is like not a lot of lyrics in that song, but still I was just like, it's like, man, if they, it's like, hey, we're going to bring our buddy up here to join us. And it's like, I just come up and forget the lyrics. It's like, not a great look. Luckily I didn't forget them, but yeah, I mean, you never know. You never know with lyrics.
Especially, yeah. I mean, I love the Beatles, but it's just assumed that everyone knows all the lyrics, but I don't think like, even like I Want to Hold Your Hand or Hard Day's Night or something like that, I think I'd probably choke at some point in the lyrics.
Yeah, I feel like those songs are so, you almost like don't even really think of them the way you think of other music, because it's just like they're almost like standards now. Like they're just like like I can't, like people are always like, oh, I remember the first time like I heard Nirvana, or I remember the first time I did this, but it's like I don't even really remember the first time I heard a lot of these Beatles songs, because it just kind of feels like I've known them my whole life. So that was another cool thing about doing all the covers, is like you kind of like by learning a song, you kind of discover stuff that maybe you take for granted, or that kind of like rolls over you as you're just listening to it over and over again. You know, like, you know, when you hear Let It Be, for example, maybe you're not necessarily like analyzing all of the little things the way you would with another song, because it's just like, this is just Let It Be. This is just what it is, and it's washing over me.
Yeah.
And if that makes sense.
No, it does. It's crazy because when you listen to it, it sounds so simple. But then when you start learning the chords, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like these guys really put a lot of work into the, like, that's insane. Like that's some like some of it's like almost classical, like chord progressions and stuff, like just and I don't think they knew what they were doing. They were just doing it, you know? But,
no. Yeah. That's what's cool. It's like, and you know, I'm not like a big musical theory guy. So my chord progressions and stuff are typically pretty straightforward, but yeah, I definitely stole a couple tricks. Like, you know, the minor fourth, that was like a revelation to me, learning all those Beatles songs. It was just like, man, that is a great trick. Just drop that minor fourth in there every once in a while. So yeah,
they were the flat seventh, third, or, you know, like those type of things where you're just like,
yeah,
whoa.
Clever gents. Those Beatles were. Yeah.
Great. And I always like Hard Day's Night again, like that chord at the beginning is like 3 different chords in one or whatever. Like I still don't understand it.
It's funny
when we were videos of like theory professors breaking it down, and I still am like, I don't understand. How is this 3 different chords and 3 different keys or whatever it is?
I mean, it probably was just like a guitar that was slightly out of tune, that was just like leaning up against a wall somewhere, right? That they just hit. And it's like, it would almost be impossible to replicate that perfectly again.
Yeah.
I remember I had a friend that was trying to learn, what's the first song on Yankee Hotel Foxtrot called? Is it I Want to Break Your Heart? I'm going to break your heart. But it's got a lot of weird like piano notes and stuff in it. And he kind of came to the realization that like the piano is just out of tune. And there's no real way to like replicate some of the notes that they got on there.
Yeah, I Am Trying to Break Your Heart.
I'm Trying to Break Your Heart. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the magic of music, you know? It's like, hey, sometimes, you know, it's like the story of like why Norwegian Wood has a sitar on it. Cause like George Harrison was filming Help and saw a sitar sitting there, and they like just happened to be recording Norwegian Wood the next day. And it was just like, oh, sure, throw some sitar on there, you know? Right. Could have been any other song that ended up with that sitar part on it. But, you know, those are the fun parts of making music.
Yeah, I love those behind the scenes, like the Rolling Stones. There's a couple documentaries on them recording, like the one where they did it out of that truck. They like got kicked out of, they got kicked out of England or something like that, so they had to record somewhere else. Yeah, it's like super cool, just like how they, you know, it's cool to just try new things every album. You shouldn't set up a formula. It's basically what I think is important to getting a good album. Well, the album comes out. This better be good on April 29th on all streaming platforms. Got CDs available. What's your website?
PeterDonovanmusic.com.
And your social, are you on Twitter or Instagram?
No Twitter. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Those are both Peter Donovan Music also.
Right on. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. Yeah. Definitely looking forward to the album dropping on the 29th. Got a playlist, a couple playlists. We'll put them on so the listeners can hear some of those tunes.
Cool. Thanks so much.
All right, that's it for this episode of Americana Station Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Next time we'll have Christina Vane on the podcast, so make sure that you are subscribed so you get that update whenever it happens. Rate and review us so that we can keep on climbing the ladder of those podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, we are on Patreon, patreon.com/Americana Station, and we would appreciate any money that you would throw our way so that we can keep this thing going. We'll see you next time with Christina Vane. I'm Will Payne Harrison.
You've been lying now for some time, and I'm familiar now with all your lines. When I thought that I'd heard enough, you cleared your throat and stood. I said this better be good.